Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, you're stuck in the same patterns, lost, confused, and unable to move forward? You try to change, but something invisible pulls you back into old habits, old fears, and old versions of yourself. Carl Jung called this the power of the unconscious mind, a force that shapes your life without you even realizing it. In this video, we'll explore the psychological trap that keeps you lost, and, more importantly, how you can finally break free. You may think that you're in full control of your life, making decisions, setting goals, and shaping your future. But what if there's something much deeper at play? Something that's influencing every choice you make without you even realizing it? Carl Jung argued that our unconscious mind holds the key to our behavior, and its power is far stronger than we give it credit for. Imagine being in a room with thick, dark curtains. You can't see what's outside, but you know there's a world out there. These curtains represent your unconscious mind, blocking the light of awareness from reaching the deeper parts of your psyche. It's like there's a hidden part of you that is pulling the strings behind the scenes, dictating your actions, reactions, and desires. Jung believed that this invisible force is made up of things like unresolved trauma, childhood experiences, repressed emotions, and untapped desires. These elements may seem harmless when they remain out of sight, but they shape your world in ways you can't easily recognize. For example, maybe you've found yourself stuck in unhealthy relationships, making the same mistakes over and over again. No matter how much you try to break free, something seems to pull you back into the cycle. That's the unconscious mind at work, storing memories, feelings, and patterns from your past that have yet to be integrated or healed. Your unconscious mind might be protecting you from feelings you don't want to face, but in doing so, it keeps you in a state of confusion and stagnation. Jung referred to this as the shadow, the darker, hidden aspects of our personality. These are the parts of ourselves that we've been taught to deny or hide, usually because they're seen as unacceptable by society or even by our own standards. The problem is, the more we suppress these parts, the stronger they become, affecting our lives in ways we don't even understand. Every time we push something down into our unconscious, it grows stronger, and eventually it manifests in our lives in unhealthy ways. The reason you feel stuck or lost may not be because of anything you consciously want, but because your unconscious is carrying unresolved pieces of your past that refuse to stay buried. We often find ourselves trapped by these unseen forces because we fail to confront the darker, more difficult aspects of our psyche. We think that avoiding pain, conflict, or discomfort will make us happy, but it only keeps us in a state of inertia. Jung believed that the first step to true personal growth is to become aware of this unconscious material and face it head-on, no matter how painful or uncomfortable. When you bring these hidden elements into the light, you start to untangle the knots that are keeping you trapped in old patterns and begin the journey toward liberation. Throughout your life, you've been shaped by forces you may not even remember, experiences that occurred long before you could consciously make sense of them. From the moment you were born, the world began to imprint its expectations on you, shaping the person you would become. From the expectations of your parents to the pressures of school, society, and peers, your sense of identity was formed not just by who you truly are, but by who the world told you to be. You might think of yourself as the person who you've always known you were. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself whether the identity you've built for yourself is truly yours, or just a mask you've worn to fit into the world around you? Jung called this the persona, the social mask we present to the world. It's the role we play to meet the expectations of others and to fit into the roles society assigns us. For example, maybe you've always been the good student, the hard worker, or the helpful friend, and these labels have become so ingrained in your identity that you've forgotten who you really are underneath them. The persona is necessary for survival in the social world, but it comes with a cost. While the persona helps you navigate society, it also hides your authentic self from view. The more you live in alignment with what others expect from you, the more disconnected you become from your true desires, values, and passions. Over time, you begin to feel lost, unable to determine where your true self ends and where the mask begins. The confusion you feel is a result of this disconnection between your inner self and the role you've been taught to play. Jung's work emphasizes the importance of acknowledging and understanding the persona, but also recognizing when it's time to peel away the mask. The persona becomes a trap when it limits your potential and prevents you from expressing your true self. If you're constantly trying to meet the expectations of others, you'll never have the chance to fully explore who you are and what you want from life. Breaking free from the persona means rejecting the roles you've been assigned and creating an identity that reflects your true values, desires, and potential. When you're no longer confined by societal roles, you begin to reconnect with the parts of yourself that were buried under layers of external influence. You start to feel a sense of authenticity and freedom that you've never experienced before. But this process requires courage, as it involves letting go of the familiar and venturing into the unknown. When you dare to confront the false self you've created, you unlock the possibility for personal growth, authenticity, and fulfillment. These unconscious forces, your persona and shadow, are not the only traps that keep you stuck in confusion. Another powerful force that holds you back is your inability to confront the deeper, darker aspects of your own mind, the parts of yourself that you've pushed aside because they're too painful or too difficult to face. This is the realm of the shadow, and it's where much of your potential lies. The shadow is made up of all the qualities and traits that you've repressed because they don't fit into your conscious self-image. Maybe it's your anger, your jealousy, your fear, or your desires that you don't want to acknowledge. These parts of yourself are hidden away, but they still influence your actions, often in ways that you don't fully understand. Imagine walking around with a heavy backpack filled with everything you've ever tried to avoid: traumas, fears, failures, and all the emotions that you've been taught are bad or wrong. The longer you carry that bag without looking inside, the more it weighs you down, and the more it affects the way you see the world. Eventually, it can become so heavy that you start to feel like you can't breathe or move freely. You may not even realize it, but your shadow is controlling you from the inside out. The only way to break free from this trap is to face your shadow, to allow yourself to feel the uncomfortable emotions and acknowledge the parts of you that you've long rejected. When you bring your shadow into the light of consciousness, you stop running from it and you begin to understand its power. You realize that these hidden parts of yourself aren't the enemy. They're just pieces of your psyche that need to be integrated in order to create wholeness and balance. This doesn't mean that every aspect of the shadow is easy to accept or integrate. It's not about glorifying your flaws or mistakes, but learning to accept them as part of the human experience. When you embrace your shadow, you gain a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. You no longer feel lost because you've found the parts of yourself that were always there, waiting to be recognized. Deep within your psyche lies a part of you that you've been avoiding, and it's this hidden, often feared part that may hold the key to understanding why you feel lost or stuck. Jung called it the shadow, a powerful force that exists in the unconscious, composed of all the traits, desires, emotions, and memories that you've repressed over time. These are the parts of yourself that you don't like, that society discourages, or that simply seem too painful to acknowledge. The more you try to push these aspects of yourself away, the stronger they become, subtly influencing your thoughts and actions without you realizing it. When you're born, your mind is like a blank canvas, untainted by the world around you. But as you grow, you start to receive messages about what's acceptable, what's good, and what's bad. The people in your life, particularly your family and society, impose their views on you, and you begin to internalize these ideas. As you do, certain parts of yourself, like your anger, envy, or even certain desires, are deemed undesirable or socially unacceptable. These emotions and impulses are then pushed down into your unconscious mind, where they stay hidden, festering in the dark corners of your psyche. The problem is that these repressed qualities don't simply disappear. Even though you may not consciously acknowledge them, they don't go away. They keep demanding attention from beneath the surface, trying to make themselves known. For example, let's say you've been taught to be kind and patient, and you've suppressed your feelings of irritation or frustration. Over time, this suppression of anger may result in passive-aggressive behavior, or you may find yourself snapping unexpectedly over small inconveniences. This is your shadow, the part of you that's been buried under layers of societal conditioning and self-imposed restraint, trying to surface. Ignoring or repressing these shadow aspects doesn't make them disappear. In fact, it's like adding more fuel to the fire. The more you resist acknowledging them, the more they begin to control you. Jung observed that repressed feelings don't vanish. They often resurface in distorted ways. They could emerge in a moment of rage, or as self-sabotage, or even in dreams that seem perplexing or frightening. The shadow doesn't simply stay passive in the background. It takes every opportunity to express itself, often in ways that leave you confused or feeling as though you're losing control. If you're constantly fighting against your shadow, you may experience anxiety, depression, or a deep sense of disconnect from yourself. The more you try to run from it, the more entangled you become in your own contradictions. However, Jung believed that the key to breaking free from this psychological trap is not in suppressing or avoiding the shadow, but in acknowledging it and integrating it into your conscious self. Facing your shadow is not an easy task. It means being willing to confront those parts of yourself that you've spent years ignoring, the parts that make you uncomfortable or that you feel ashamed of. But Jung argued that this confrontation is the only way to achieve true psychological growth and inner peace. By embracing your shadow, you gain a deeper understanding of yourself, your true self, not the image you've tried to maintain for the world, but the authentic, unpolished version of you. This process of confronting the shadow is called shadow work, and it involves looking at the qualities you've rejected and exploring why you've pushed them away. For instance, if you feel jealousy or envy toward others, rather than dismissing these feelings as negative, take a step back and ask yourself where they're coming from. Are these feelings revealing something about your own desires, insecurities, or unmet needs? When you approach your shadow with curiosity rather than judgment, you begin to uncover the reasons why these parts of you have remained hidden. Shadow work is about developing a sense of self-acceptance, where you can acknowledge both your strengths and weaknesses without being defined by either. When you allow yourself to feel the full spectrum of human emotions, anger, sadness, fear, or even joy, you open up the possibility for greater emotional resilience and growth. Accepting your shadow isn't about becoming perfect or getting rid of your flaws. It's about integrating these aspects of yourself and understanding them as part of the whole. The challenge with the shadow is that it often brings up uncomfortable feelings, guilt, shame, or even fear. We're not always ready to face these emotions, especially when they challenge our carefully constructed image of ourselves. But it's precisely in this discomfort that the possibility for growth lies. Jung believed that by embracing these hidden parts, we can become more whole, more authentic, and more powerful. Once you begin to face the shadow, you start to notice subtle shifts in your life. You may begin to experience more freedom, less internal conflict, and a stronger sense of self-empowerment. The more you acknowledge and integrate your shadow, the less power it has over you. Instead of being controlled by the unconscious forces that used to govern your actions, you take back control, moving from a place of integration rather than suppression. Your shadow is not something to fear, but something to understand. It's a necessary part of the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self. Jung believed that when you embrace your shadow, you stop seeing the world in black and white, good and bad. Instead, you see the complexity of human nature and recognize that both light and dark coexist within you. This shift in perspective allows you to move beyond the confines of right and wrong and into a space where you can be fully authentic and in alignment with your true purpose. The transformation that comes from shadow work is not immediate. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to sit with uncomfortable truths. But the reward is profound. When you no longer run from the parts of yourself that you've rejected, you begin to see the world in a new light, one where you are more whole, more aware, and more connected to your authentic self. The shadow, once feared and avoided, becomes a powerful ally in your journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Instead of being the source of your confusion and pain, it becomes the doorway to the freedom and self-empowerment that you've been seeking all along. In the end, the shadow is not the enemy, it is the teacher, and the more you learn to face it, the more you unlock the potential within yourself to live a life that is truly your own, free from the psychological traps that have kept you lost for so long. The path to true self-discovery and growth is not a straightforward one, and Carl Jung's concept of individuation reveals why. At its core, individuation is the process of becoming whole, of integrating all aspects of yourself, both the light and the dark, the known and the unknown. It is the journey of moving from a fragmented, unconscious existence to one that is consciously aware and aligned with your true self. To understand individuation, it's essential to recognize that most of us are living a life of partial self-awareness. We live according to the roles society has assigned us, carrying out routines that are deeply influenced by external pressures, past conditioning, and unconscious fears. We may have some understanding of who we are, but it's often just a surface-level understanding, shaped by expectations, labels, and a fear of stepping into the unknown. Individuation is about stripping away these layers of false identity and reconnecting with the deeper, truer aspects of your being. It's about coming to terms with the parts of yourself that you've repressed, the shadow aspects of your personality, and integrating them into your conscious identity. It is a lifelong process, one that requires courage, self-reflection, and a willingness to dive into the unknown parts of your psyche. The goal of individuation is not to become perfect or complete in the conventional sense. Rather, it's about embracing your unique self, flaws and all, and learning to live in alignment with your deepest truth. At the beginning of the individuation process, you may experience a sense of confusion, a feeling that something is missing, or an unexplainable desire for change. This is because, on some level, you've outgrown the roles and identities you've been playing up until now. It's a deep inner knowing that the life you're living no longer fits who you are becoming. You might feel disconnected from others or from your own sense of purpose. The more you resist this pull toward growth, the more it will feel like an existential crisis, a gap between where you are and where you feel you're meant to be. This is where the process of self-integration begins. Individuation requires you to go through a profound transformation. It means breaking down the walls between your conscious and unconscious mind, allowing the repressed, hidden aspects of yourself to come into the light. It's about becoming aware of the parts of you that have been ignored, rejected, or misunderstood, and bringing them into your conscious awareness. For example, let's say that you've lived most of your life as a people pleaser, always striving to meet the expectations of others and avoid conflict. But deep inside, there may be an anger or frustration that you've suppressed because it doesn't fit the nice image you've tried to cultivate. Individuation would involve recognizing that anger, accepting it as part of who you are, and learning to express it in healthy ways. Rather than repressing this emotion, you begin to understand why it exists within you and how it can be channeled productively. In this process, you also need to recognize the importance of the archetypes that shape your experience. Archetypes are universal, symbolic patterns of behavior that reside in the collective unconscious. They represent different facets of the human experience, such as the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, or the animus. These archetypes are not just abstract concepts. They are deeply ingrained in your psyche, influencing your actions and perceptions at a profound level. As you undergo the process of individuation, you begin to recognize how these archetypes show up in your life, either as forces that empower you or as patterns that limit your growth. For instance, the hero archetype is about the desire for transformation and growth, but it also represents the ego's need to prove itself and seek validation. As you become more aware of this archetype within yourself, you may begin to question why you have been driven to prove your worth or achieve external success. Are these pursuits aligned with your true self, or are they driven by insecurity or external pressures? By recognizing and understanding these archetypes, you start to gain more insight into your personal motivations, desires, and fears. You become less controlled by unconscious patterns and more empowered to make conscious choices that align with your true nature. The individuation process allows you to recognize how these archetypes play a role in your life and integrate them into a more balanced, conscious existence. Individuation is also about recognizing the need for balance in your life. It's not enough to simply focus on one aspect of yourself and ignore the others. For example, you might be very focused on your intellect, constantly trying to understand and control your world through logic and analysis. But if you neglect your emotional life, your creativity, or your spiritual side, you remain out of balance, which can lead to feelings of emptiness, frustration, or burnout. The individuation process involves recognizing and embracing all parts of yourself, giving space to your emotions, creativity, intuition, and spirituality, alongside your intellectual and rational pursuits. One of the most profound elements of individuation is the relationship with the self, which Jung referred to as the self with a capital S. The self is not the ego, which represents your conscious identity, but the deeper, more integrated essence of who you truly are. It's the totality of your being, including both the conscious and unconscious parts. The goal of individuation is to move toward a union with the self, to experience the fullness of your existence in all its complexity. This means not just knowing who you are in a superficial sense, but understanding and embodying the totality of your being, embracing both your light and dark sides. It's the union of opposites within you, the rational and irrational, the conscious and unconscious, the masculine and feminine, and finding harmony in that union. As you move through the individuation process, you may also experience moments of crisis, often referred to as the dark night of the soul. These are periods of intense internal conflict and confusion, where you feel disconnected from your sense of purpose and are forced to confront the deepest parts of your psyche. These crises are a natural part of the individuation journey. They are moments of transformation, where you are being asked to let go of outdated beliefs, false identities, and attachments in order to evolve into the next phase of your life. Although these moments can feel overwhelming, they are ultimately liberating. The dark night of the soul is not about staying in darkness, but about emerging from it with a greater sense of clarity, self-understanding, and authenticity. It's through these moments of crisis that you begin to see the illusion of your former self and step into the fullness of your true potential. The process of individuation is not a destination, it's a lifelong journey. There is no final point where you achieve perfect wholeness, but rather an ongoing process of growth, integration, and self-discovery. The more you move through the individuation process, the more you develop a deep sense of inner peace, authenticity, and connection to your true self. You begin to see life with greater clarity, no longer trapped by the illusions of the past or the pressures of society. Instead, you live with purpose, guided by an internal compass that is rooted in the wisdom of your true self. Individuation is ultimately about becoming who you were always meant to be, shedding the layers of false identity and self-limiting beliefs, and embracing the fullness of your being. It's about becoming whole. The final stage of Carl Jung's individuation process involves the integration of the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. But it's not merely about finding balance, it's about transcending the binary distinctions that often govern our way of thinking. When you reach the culmination of individuation, you're no longer bound by the limitations of the ego and its constant need for control, validation, and survival. Instead, you begin to experience a deeper connection to the unity of existence and to the larger collective consciousness that transcends the individual self. This experience of transcendence is often described as an encounter with the self, the totality of your being that exists beyond the ego and its confines. Reaching this stage doesn't mean the journey is over or that you've reached a place of perfection. Rather, it marks a profound shift in your relationship with yourself and the world. It is the point at which you cease to see life through the lens of duality, good and evil, right and wrong, success and failure, and start to understand the unity of opposites. You begin to realize that these opposites are not in conflict, but are necessary components of the whole. The masculine and feminine, the rational and emotional, the conscious and unconscious, all these aspects of life, once seen as separate and at odds, are now seen as complementary forces that coexist in a dynamic, interdependent relationship. This transcendence often leads to a sense of oneness with all things. You no longer see yourself as a solitary individual, separate from the world and others, but as a part of a greater whole. This realization can be transformative as it fundamentally shifts your perspective on life. You begin to recognize that every experience, no matter how challenging or painful, is part of a larger, more meaningful process. You no longer resist life's difficulties, but instead accept them as necessary parts of your own personal growth and the collective human experience. At this stage, you also start to experience a deeper connection to your own inner wisdom. This wisdom is not intellectual or learned through books or external sources, but arises from the depths of the unconscious. It's a wisdom that comes from embracing your shadow, accepting your flaws and contradictions, and integrating them into a cohesive whole. This wisdom is grounded in the understanding that life is inherently uncertain and unpredictable, and that the only certainty lies within the self, in the knowledge that you are connected to something much larger than your individual ego. This connection to the self is often described as a spiritual awakening, although it is not confined to any specific religious or philosophical tradition. It is an experience of profound unity and interconnectedness, in which you see the divine in everything around you. Jung believed that the experience of the self was akin to an encounter with the archetype of God, not in the traditional sense of a distant, separate deity, but as a manifestation of the divine within the individual. In this sense, individuation can be seen as a spiritual journey, one that leads to a deeper understanding of your own divine nature and your connection to the greater cosmos. One of the key elements of this stage is the dissolution of the ego. The ego, which is the conscious, rational part of the mind, has served as a necessary function throughout your life, helping you navigate the world and make decisions. But as you move through the individuation process, the ego begins to lose its dominance. It's not that the ego disappears completely, but rather that it becomes less important. The ego's constant need for control, validation, and self-preservation gradually fades, and you begin to experience life from a more expansive, unifying perspective. This shift often feels liberating. You no longer feel bound by the need to prove yourself, achieve success, or live up to external expectations. Instead, you experience life as a flow, a dance between the inner and outer worlds. You are able to live more authentically, without the constant pressure to conform to societal norms or the demands of others. The more you embrace this liberation, the more you are able to move through life with ease, navigating its challenges with a sense of inner peace and acceptance. However, this transcendence is not without its challenges. As you move closer to the realization of the self, you may encounter resistance from both within and without. Your ego may fight against the dissolution of its control, fearing that without its dominance, you will lose your sense of self or direction. Others around you may not understand the changes you are going through, and you may feel isolated or misunderstood. These challenges are part of the process, as they push you to further confront the fears and attachments that still linger within you. Additionally, the process of transcendence can sometimes lead to moments of existential crisis. As you begin to see beyond the confines of the ego and its limitations, you may experience a sense of disorientation or confusion. The world may seem less certain, and you may find it difficult to navigate the familiar structures and routines that once provided comfort. This is a natural part of the individuation journey, as you are stepping into uncharted territory and leaving behind the security of old patterns. Despite these challenges, the rewards of transcendence are profound. As you continue to integrate the unconscious with the conscious, you experience a deeper sense of wholeness. Your sense of self expands beyond the narrow confines of the ego, and you begin to see yourself as part of a greater, interconnected whole. This shift in perspective allows you to experience life with a sense of freedom and peace that was previously elusive. You begin to trust in the flow of life, knowing that you are being guided by something greater than yourself, and that everything you experience is part of your personal growth and the evolution of the collective consciousness. The culmination of individuation is not about achieving a final, static state of being, but rather about living in harmony with your true self. It's about accepting and embracing all aspects of your being, including your flaws, fears, and contradictions. It's about finding peace in the knowledge that you are both an individual and part of the larger collective, and that your personal journey is intertwined with the journeys of others. In this sense, individuation is not just a personal process, it is a collective one. As more individuals undergo the process of individuation, the collective consciousness evolves, creating a more integrated and harmonious world. By embracing the shadow, recognizing the unity of opposites, and transcending the ego, you contribute to the greater transformation of humanity. Through this process, you not only discover your true self, but you also become part of the larger cosmic order, a vital thread in the intricate web of existence. The final stage of individuation is an ongoing journey, one that continues throughout life. As you move through this process, you deepen your connection to the self, and you begin to experience a sense of peace, purpose, and belonging that transcends the limitations of the ego. You realize that you are both an individual and part of the vast, interconnected whole, and that your personal journey is a reflection of the larger journey of humanity. Through this realization, you become more fully yourself, more fully present, and more fully alive.